And we're back. I'm Professor Scott Plum at the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
As a sale comes to its culmination, the buyer may ask for concessions, often a lowering of price. What is the salesperson to do? Hold her ground to maintain the price and the profitability, but perhaps lose the deal? Or find some way to respond positively to the buyer's request and find a mutually agreeable solution? Should negotiation play a part in the salesperson's toolkit, or is it an invitation for price cutting? Scott and I believe we have very different points of view on this topic. So let's see if there are some fireworks as we discuss negotiation training for salespeople, Point-Counterpoint. All that and more on episode 426 of the Get in the Door podcast.
So before the fireworks, Bill, let's talk about Chapter 9 of the Challenger
I don't know. We're
Sale.
not really good at fireworks.
No, I don't. Well, we'll have an engaging conversation because we haven't prepared collaboratively as in negotiate. We've
That's easy for you
prepared
to say.
independently.
That's right.
So we've kind of alluded on this topic, but we'll see what comes out as we address it head on and make it the highlight of the show.
Yeah, but before that,
Chapter 9 of the Challenger Sale, implementation lessons from the early adopter. And this early adopter, I don't know if people know where this term came from. It was a book written by Jeffrey Moore called Crossing the Chasm, which talks about the different steps of when a market develops as a product is introduced. And they have to cross the chasm from the early adopters to the mass audiences in order for it to really pick up. So it's interesting that they use that in this definition of the title.
yeah, Scott, I think that term early adopters came earlier perhaps than Jeffrey Moore. I've heard it for years in the computer business with people, the early adopters buy the first level of computers, which were very expensive. And then we move on to people like me who are happy to get the lower technology because I just don't need the cutting edge technology, but it depends on what people need. But I think in this case, obviously he's talking about the people who wanted to try this Challenger sale and help them prove it.
Mm-hmm. And it starts early on in the interviewing process. When we're interviewing salespeople is where it really starts, and we have different types of interview. But if I can talk about the context of implementation in the process of change, and I think I might have talked about this in past episodes, is the process of change has really 4 steps to it. So it's awareness. We're frustrated. We're scratching our head. We're asking ourselves, there's just got to be a better way. What am I not doing that I know that I should be doing? And what am I doing that I know that I shouldn't be doing? And that's the first step of change is awareness. Then we get the knowledge and we get the information. And we believe the knowledge and information will work. And we believe that we deserve a better life with the knowledge and information once we apply it. If we don't believe that we deserve a better life, we will not apply any new information or new knowledge. So the third step is the application. And this is where I think a lot of salespeople really struggle on getting to the level that they want, achieving the goals they want, because they've learned something new, but they haven't, for one reason or another, had the guts and courage to apply it. And success is going to be determined by the application of a new skill, new knowledge, a new technique, etc. And then the fourth step is the internalization. And the last chapter, 8, talked about internalizing. So we've got some process of change in the book, but it's really important that once we know something, learn something, that we apply it. Do you agree with that? Or have you seen something different?
I use a tool called the cycle of self-development. I put this on a wheel.
Okay.
Basically, it's the same steps. The key is the need, recognizing the need, and then the knowledge. And at the 6 o'clock position, I call it the knowledge trap. And that is where we get a whole bunch of information and we don't do anything about it.
Right.
And I see people like that. A good friend of mine called that a good attitude bum. They read all kinds of great attitude things, but they never implement. They never do the application that you talk about. I call it practice. But it's absolutely true that if that is the hardest step in making something happen, creating a change, improving yourself, improving your team, is to get them to go outside and start to do something with it. If they do that and they have success, then they will get better. If they do that and they have failure and the manager isn't there to help them overcome that failure, figure out why the new idea didn't fail, they're going to fall back into their old habits. And I think salespeople are especially prone to this because they're thinking, I lost that sale because I tried this new thing.
Right. And they blew the technique and they
Right.
didn't, and it wasn't that the technique was wrong. It's just that they didn't apply it
They put it in the wrong situation,
right,
they said it the wrong way.
wrong context, yeah,
Yep.
etc.
Yep. Yeah, they did the would it be okay if I challenged you? Because
Oh,
I don't
jeez.
and then, hey, I really fought him hard,
Yeah.
and
Or my manager wants me to try something new. Is it okay
oh
if
yeah,
I
yeah,
try
yeah.
it
Oh,
out on you?
that's my favorite one. Yeah. They're making me do this thing here.
Yeah.
So it's not my fault. Oh my gosh, I see that
Oh.
one in almost everything when we
I'm
try
one sale
something new.
away from a company trip.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
can you buy from me and I get to go to Florida?
Yeah, well, that's bad enough. But I think the one that that you just outlined, and that is my boss or my company is making me try this. So if I fail, it's not my fault.
Right.
Someone else's fault. If this sale loses, I have somebody else to blame it on, instead of really understanding that new ideas can work if you present them in the right way. But if you always present them in an apologetic, this isn't my fault way, they're not going to work.
It's all about confidence. And I think a lot of confidence is established by the credibility that the prospect has in the salesperson. And most of us sell a service, or we sell a product and a service. And if we're not selling a commodity, there's some service involved. And the confidence that the prospect has and the salesperson is built on that confidence and credibility that the salesperson has in buying first what they're selling. If they don't buy it, they can't sell it.
Belief. You have to have some belief.
Yeah.
You mentioned interviewing. What did the book talk about with the interviewing process that was different?
It just talks about how you interview differently with a challenger sales model in mind, and looking for a person that is going to challenge the prospect. So you might have an interview where the person doing the interview is challenging the candidate in a way to see how they can respond to being challenged. And if they're bending over or caving in or becoming docile, right, or are they standing up to it? And this is a new interview technique where interviewers are challenging salespeople, going, I just don't think that you've got the commitment to be able to do this kind of job.
Right.
And they go negative. And then the candidate is supposed to fight back, going, what do you mean? What have I told you that shows you that I'm not committed?
And I think too, they're saying, look for different skill sets. Know the skill sets that you're looking for with the challenger, and start to ask questions around those skill sets. People ask me quite often, what should I be looking for in a salesperson? And so often I see businesses just going back to the same well. Let's hire somebody who has experience in our industry. Well, that person got fired from your industry for a reason. Right. He's looking for a job, or she's looking for a job for a reason. Mm-hmm. So I say, what are the toughest things to train into people? Mm-hmm. And some of these challenger skills are tough to challenge or to train in. Right. Right. The attitude of challenging people, but also, hard work and resiliency and the ability to take a punch and get back up and go again. So many salespeople, I think, fail because they quit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're looking for somebody who doesn't have a lot of quit in them. Right. So, and the challenger, and these challenger skills are important as well.
I believe commitment is the main attribute to a successful salesperson. The book talked about a percentage of 87% of sales reps forget what they learn in 30 days if it's not applied or not reinforced. And this is the breakdown that I see often when I come into a company and I work with the sales team. I develop them and teaching them new skills, a new mindset, a new behavior, new techniques, etc. And for one reason or another, the leadership is not in the room, or the sales management doesn't reinforce it or believe in the change.
Well, they're just as lazy sometimes as the salespeople.
It can
be.
They're
just as afraid of change as the salespeople.
Yeah. And there are some good sales managers, and there are some ones that are just there to check the box, and maybe they were promoted from being a salesperson to a manager, and maybe they want to be liked by their sales team because they want to feel like they're a colleague of their sales team, and maybe that's how they lead, is by being a colleague of the sales team instead of having that mentor's mentality, right, and doing it first.
Well, one of the things, I'm really fortunate. I've got a sales program that I just finished. Actually, they didn't want to mention sales at all because the people were too sensitive to being called salespeople. But that's okay, because they learned the tools that they needed to learn. But the client has allowed me to go back in once a month and have a meeting with the whole team. And we're able to do it over Zoom, so it doesn't take travel for everybody to a certain spot, and that's very valuable. And the things we're learning from each other, we tend to get into one topic and what they're doing well and what they wish and they were doing better. And it's really been beneficial because the sales manager in this case is also learning how to coach and work with the people. So I think it's really important to have a long-term process. And they mentioned that in this, have a long-term process whenever you're going to try to make change for your team so that you can go back to that person who taught it and throw questions at them and throw ideas and say, here's what we tried and here's what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah, one of the things the book included was coaching is the principal lever for boosting training stickiness. So in order for the application of new knowledge, new information, new techniques to work, it needs to be reinforced through coaching. So training is the introduction of information. Coaching is the application of that new information. Yeah. And each sales rep has to have a different relationship with the sales manager, and each manager has to have their own relationship with the sales rep. Right. And if we don't do that, then we're not coaching. We're training and maybe not even managing at that point because you don't really have an individual relationship with each of the individuals.
Yeah, I think the difference between training and coaching really in many cases, training is you're throwing the information out there to a group, whereas coaching, you're able to be a lot more two-way about how they're using that material or trying things and you get a lot more honesty. Even in the training room when you do your best job, you get a lot of lying.
Yeah. So as we wrap it up, I just want to cover three things. They had a great section on avoiding certain buzzwords, which was really good. I read these buzzwords, and as these buzzwords are included in a company description or a website or a LinkedIn profile, it's like, what does that mean? Because that has so many different meanings. So avoid buzzwords. I like the term be memorable, not agreeable. So as a salesperson is interacting with a prospect, be memorable, not agreeable. And the last one is lead to a solution, not with a solution. I thought that was very profound.
Excellent. Well, good summary of that book. We do have one more chapter that we're going to do the afterword that we're going to take care of at the next podcast. But our next book is Beyond Selling Value, a proven process to avoid the vendor trap by Mark Shanka and Dan Kosh. And so we'll do, we've got this week, we'll do one more next week. So make sure you get that book if you want to read along with us, Beyond Selling Value.
This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by your host of Get In the Door podcast. Business is heating up, and now is the time to get back on the selling track. While others wait for the market to improve, prospects and opportunities await you now. Perhaps you want to be more productive on your prospecting, or you'd like to increase your closing percentage. Maybe having meetings online is not as comfortable as being in person. Sales reps are telling us they need some honest accountability and skill development to rise above the competition. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why the host of Get In the Door podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. For only $495, you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us your insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. After your 1-hour online session to jumpstart your coaching process, you will receive 5 more half-hour individual coaching sessions to enable you to make improvements over time and create new habits. Most salespeople make their money back with just one sale. Go to getinthedoorpodcast.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself and invest in your future. We haven't done this in a while, but we've got some feedback from a listener. Simon Collins from Australia. He says, I stumbled upon your podcast with Bill a fortnight ago, and I'm hooked. You complement each other very well and effortlessly deliver expert advice on sales fundamentals that I find invaluable as I strive to improve my sales daily. So really grateful that we're able to make an impact on somebody's life and they're able to apply what they learn at the podcast, which is the episode today is application. So It's all relevant.
Right. It's that far away. It still works.
Yeah.
Even in Australia. Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks, Simon. We appreciate the feedback. Our topic today is on negotiation skills for training. And so really, should a salesperson learn negotiation skills? That's a question Scott and I have been hashing over in episodes over the last couple of months. And based on our conversations, I think it's going to help them maintain margin. And Scott thinks it's an open door to dropping price. So you're going to.
Yeah, I think that's how it's interpreted. Unfortunately.
All right. Well, let's see. So you guys are going to get to hear our positions, make up your own minds, and then send us a note at getinthedoorpodcast.com about where you stand on this issue. So let's. I think I teach negotiation skills, so I think it's important because I think you're going to drop the price if you don't have anything else to do. It goes back to the old saw about training. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If all you have is price to deal with, then you're going to deal on price. So my first point is that your customer is going to ask for concessions, and the salesperson better learn to deal with it. They need to use their value drivers as negotiation chips, and they have to have something to say when the customer says, drop my price, other than, I can't do that.
Right. And I think the value drivers are really important. I think sometimes the value drivers are masked with objections through the prospect, and the salesperson.
What do you mean by that? Give me an example.
Well, a prospect will give an objection about a drawback, which is something that is part of the offer. So there's not anything that we can really change about that.
Okay. All of ours are green, and they say they don't like them green.
Yeah. So you need to work on selling green. And that's not negotiable. I teach negotiation for real estate agents, and that is an industry where you negotiate everything. And you negotiate everything because when you get a purchase order, a contract, everything that's blank is negotiable. Where when you've got a purchase agreement for a product or service that you're selling, or an order form, it's not blank. It's here's the offer. So if I can put some of the context in the difference between selling and negotiating, maybe that'll help our listeners kind of determine where we're coming from. And also the salesman.
Let's go back to your contention that things this is green.
Right.
Okay. Now I'm the buyer. I may say, look, they only sell this thing in green. So let's complain about it being green, even though we don't care. Because that'll give us a leg up when it comes to getting the price dropped.
Okay.
Because later on we can say, well, listen, Scott, we'll accept that they're green, but we know that saves you money to make them all green. So we want some price drop because they're all green, and we really wanted them in yellow.
Well, help me understand why green is a problem.
Well, green is a problem because it just doesn't match our color scheme, the way we provide this, and it doesn't stand out in the way that we want them to stand out.
So it sounds like it's going to be used in your branding.
Yeah, don't worry about that. The thing is that we really just don't like the color. So the reason we don't like the color doesn't matter. We just don't like the color, and you're not going to put them in any other color, right? So
it sounds like what you're saying is if I drop the price, you like the color.
No, but we'll put up with it because we're not getting exactly what we want. We're not getting exactly what we want, Scott.
So you're buying something that you won't like at the end.
So and Scott, you're negotiating now.
I'm not negotiating. I'm selling. I'm trying to overcome the objection and get somebody to accept the offer without changing it.
So where those two things fall is where negotiation happens, and that is that you're trying to figure out whether that value driver is really important for us, and you're driving some questions into it. But the fact that you need to recognize that this is a negotiation happening already. Here's what too many salespeople don't recognize. You're in negotiation from the moment you set your foot in that door. They're looking for things that they can use against you as a tool. I mean, you've got to admit it, Scott. You've negotiated on things that you already planned on buying at the price they were already going to deliver it at.
You're right. When it's an opportunity to negotiate, yes. But I could also say you're selling from the moment you pick up the phone or enter the door.
Oh, absolutely.
At the same time. So am I going to work on negotiating, where negotiation is always price and terms, versus sales is a solution that you cannot separate?
Well, price and terms are not the only things you negotiate on.
Well,
you can negotiate on everything that has to do with the sale, just as you said in the purchase agreement for a house. Everything is negotiable. I don't like that there's a crack in the wall. I don't like that there's this. I don't like that there's that. Those aren't terms. Those are challenges that I want to bring up so that you're off balance as a salesperson, thinking that I go and look at a car I love, and I don't go, man, give me this car. I really love it. I don't care what it costs. If I'm buying a used car, there's a scratch here, there's a ding here, there's a this here, the tire's low.
Well,
You
that's a
know?
used car. A new car, the majority of people, unfortunately, pay the sticker price on a new car.
Well, the dealers are getting very good at saying we don't negotiate.
Yeah. So now they're
So then,
selling and not negotiating.
well, no, you're negotiating. So we're splitting hairs on what the term means. But when I'm dealing with, as we close the deal and we're going back into the value drivers that we've already discussed, then we need to start figuring out how we're gonna work this together. And I need to have some things as a salesperson that are going to help me continue to move that negotiation forward.
And that's probably where it begins, is what are you willing to trade? Because when you're talking about negotiating, you're talking about the law of exchange and trading. And what are you going to trade?
Part of it.
And here's the challenge that I think sales managers have when they lead a sales team is, if they have a sales team of 10 people, they've got 10 salespeople are going to go out there and they're going to break down the solution and trade different items. And the sales manager is going to go like, how does this impact our profit margins? How does it impact the fulfillment? How do we do a mass customization with something where we want to create efficiency and effectiveness when we're providing a solution? And we've got 10 salespeople that are following 10 different negotiation models, and how do we keep them all straight?
By teaching them negotiation so they have the same negotiating model, and by working with them, just like this Challenger sale, it's no different. But you understand what the value pieces are that you can give away, or that you can do some trading with when they come to that price question.
So now you've got a company that's scalable, and they've got account managers, and they also have customer service people. So all the customer service people need to spend 15 minutes looking at the deal that the salesperson made and figure out what's negotiable and what's not, and what we agreed to and what we didn't agree to, and how do we fulfill it and how do we make it work. And that takes more time. So then that erodes at the profit margin.
Okay, well, that's fine. Then you just find yourself in a situation where you just don't get the sale at all.
Well, it depends on
what the customer says, I'm going to negotiate on this, and I want you. The customer always has the option to walk away. That's the most powerful tool they have. They've got the money and they can walk.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're willing to say, look, I'm going to hold the line on this. We're not going to do any negotiation. I'm not going to give you any concessions. I'm not going to lower my price because my manager said that I can't do any negotiation. So I'll keep asking you questions, but you're going to put your heels in and you're going to want something. And I'm going to say no, because everything has to be the same. So my customer service people don't get confused. And then they'll say, thank you very much. It's been really nice talking to you. I'll go get, the deal from the Chinese.
Well, that's the reason I ask, why is green a problem? Is because I want to be able to qualify the objection and to see how they're going to use. I may not
tell you, because it's not really a problem.
Well, then we have a problem with trust and rapport.
Well, you can have a problem with trust and rapport. You just got turned over to the purchasing agent.
Okay.
And he doesn't care about trust and rapport. He cares about dropping his price down.
Okay. So here's how you dig your heels in is, the salesperson says, how am I supposed to do that? And now you turn the tables on the prospect. Now the prospect's got to come up with a way to try to solve that problem themselves. And it's possible for the salesperson to be able to uncover the real motivation and the intent, because you're talking about negotiations. You never take on the position, you always take on the interest. And then finding out the interest, you want to find out the motivation behind the interest. Why is that important?
I'm not denying that the salesperson has to do all of those things to bring the sale to a culmination. What I'm saying is that there are times in that negotiation, in that deal, in getting that contract signed, where the customer is going to ask for some concessions, and you need to understand what you can concede on. You need to understand what their tactics they're using on. Purchasing is learning and negotiation skills, and tactics are a real part of negotiating. And if you don't understand them, you're going to get taken by them. The delay, the good cop, bad cop, all these things are tactics that they'll use on you. And if you don't have any negotiation training, you'll be susceptible to those kind of tactics. And you can have all the trust and rapport in the world you want, but this company is driven to get a better price on what they're doing, or they're driven to get this at the best deal that they can get. And you can't blame them. That's what they do. But if you don't have something else that you can work with, if you haven't thought it through, I think you're going to be susceptible to taking that penny off. More susceptible than if you sit there and dig your heels and say, I'm going to just ask you more questions.
and that's possible. And I think in order for a company to be in a position to be able to include sales and negotiations, they need to be really defined on what they're willing to trade and exchange and the ingredients that they're able to negotiate on so that it's consistent across the board.
I think so. I think so that, we don't want loose cannons out there, but, most salespeople that I deal with aren't loose cannons. They're trying to get the best deal for the company. It's understanding, I think, what we can trade that has a high perceived value to the customer, but doesn't cost us very much. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned terms. Sometimes it's terms. Sometimes it's we'll take on the paper on this for a little bit longer, or we'll do just-in-time delivery for you so you don't have to fill your warehouse. There's all kinds of little things that can still be part of what we do, but we can offer them to the customer as concessions.
There are different terms, and I'll look at an industry that I'm familiar with, and that's selling advertising. Somebody wants to start an ad in a publication. It's a new publication. It's a new ad. I might say, you're going to run just one ad. We'll give you a 3-time rate for a 1-time run. That's negotiation. So you are offering some concessions, but as also, if they end up running 3 ads, it ends up catching it up with itself. So you don't end up cutting the price. You maintain the price and you maintain your profit margins because that's what they ended up buying at the end. They might even go up to 12 times. Now they even get a greater discount.
Right. And that's always the trade-off that we make early in a customer sale is, do I give them a little bit better deal to get them going? This client that I'm working with gets a lot of rush jobs, and that's the way that they start a customer, right? The customer says, I really need some help, and you guys, can you help me in a day and a half? And they'll say, yeah, we can do that in a day and a half. The challenge is now a day and a half has been set as the timeline. And now they have to retrain that customer to say, no, really, it usually takes a week. We gave you a day and a half because you were in trouble, but that shouldn't be our normal mode of operating.
Or you would negotiate and say, that's a rush job, and that's usually a 15% increase in price, but we'll waive it this time because you haven't worked with us. But in the future, we want to have more time to be able to do projects like that and still deliver the great quality that you're expecting in a short period of time.
Right. And not only price you can deal with the 15% override on a rush job. You could say, if we can do the job in 3 days, here's what you get. But if you give us a week, here's what you get that's better. Mm-hmm. Right. So we can give you better service if we have more time. Otherwise, we're just going to get you the real surface solution.
Right. So in those areas, those are all offers that are made before the fulfillment. Now it makes it a lot easier for customer service, for account managers to end up maintaining the relationship with the customer following the same offering, but those deals were made up front before it even got into that. So you're not offering 3 different points that you've got to figure out how do you fulfill on it in the future, which is a challenge when it comes to salespeople negotiating, because how do we make sure that we maintain our value integrity at the end? Because generally negotiations by salespeople is cutting the price. Well, then you're eroding the value.
Oh, that's right.
And now you're not maintaining the profit margin that the company is built on.
Well, and prices, once the price is gone, when you drop the price, we don't get a lower price to start with. So you lose total value on a price drop.
Well, you lost your gross margin.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Your net profit. Your net profit is gone.
That's right. When you drop a dollar's gone. It's right. But if you can negotiate on something else, if you can contribute something else that is of a higher perceived value to the customer, but to you actually is a better option, you can still negotiate on that.
I would say include something in addition to that has a very high profit margin on it, so a very low cost that would enhance the deal, to add more value so the customer would think that they were special. Every customer, every prospect, every client wants to feel like they're special. They want to feel like they got a good deal. Now, if you know that's going to happen on most of your conversations, you would go in with that approach and you would include something in the process of selling something that is acceptable within the company that's not interpreted as being negotiated.
Right. Well, I think, the negotiation class I teach is called win-win negotiating. And that's my goal in sales, is to make sure that we both feel we've walked away from the table with a win. When you're trying to develop a long-term relationship with a client, to have somebody feel like they got hosed is a bad way to start off the relationship. And that can be you as a sales company. If you feel you got cheated on this deal, you're just not going to ever really feel right about this customer, and they'll end up going away. The other thing I want to talk about too, and just real briefly, Scott, before we close up, and that is making sure you have the right kind of customer. If you're a value-added seller, if you are a quality seller, and you're dealing with somebody and the only thing they want to negotiate on is price, the only thing that seems of value to them is getting a lower price, perhaps this is the wrong customer for you. Perhaps you've got somebody who's going to be a pain in the rear end the entire time you work with them.
And that's also with your marketing too. Who are you attracting through your marketing? And we really need to change up the marketing and change the perception of the value and the reputation the company has in the marketplace. And that's through a combination of marketing, sales, and the leadership of a company. Right. Companies should always start and lead with reputation. What kind of reputation do you want to have in the marketplace?
All right. Well, we hashed it out. We had a little bit of fireworks, but I think we really are just talking about terms, and I think we'd get to the same spot. But appreciate you listening. Let us know if you think it's valuable and worth more conversation and what you feel about it. Now, Scott, you have some resources that you want to talk about?
Well, I want to mention a class that I teach called Creating Collaborative Conversations. It's generally used in the real estate industry, but I have customized it for industries outside of real estate as well.
All right. And then, as I mentioned before, I have a class called Win-Win Negotiating, and then also an article that will link to how a salesperson can build negotiating leverage. This segment of the Get in the Door podcast is brought to you by Steve Kloida's book, The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Getting in the Door. Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, Your Guide to Getting in the Door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website, theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer, and the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com.
So our golden nugget to close for today is a quote by Bob Wolf, who's a sports agent. I think he represented Larry Bird. His quote is, "I have one thing that's not negotiable. I demand that I meet your interest. The reason I want to meet your interest is if I don't meet your interest, you won't meet mine. And I'm a very selfish guy. I want my interest met."
Well, I think if you've got a product that's unique, like a Michael Jordan or a Larry Bird, it's really easy to negotiate. Give me all I want, and then you'll be happy. So I think that's the tougher negotiation is when there's 7 other companies that look and feel pretty much like what you're selling to compete with. So I think that in a negotiation, not everyone's full interest may be able to be met. But I think what you're saying there is, let's look for the win-win. Let's look that both of us come out of this with something that we get, maybe something that we don't get that we wanted. But if you're too much of a selfish guy, which he talks about, I think it's going to be hard to find that mutually beneficial solution.
Did you just say that both interests won't be met? I thought it was win-win where everybody's happy at the end.
Yeah, I said they're full interests.
Okay.
I won't get everything that I want, but I will be satisfied with what I do get. Otherwise, I should walk away from the deal.
Okay. I love this quote because it really dispels this perception in negotiation of never go first. Somebody has got to go first. In real estate, who goes first? Well, the seller goes first because the sign is in the front yard, says we're willing to sell the house. So that's the beginning of the conversation. But I think we always want to know, what is it that the other side wants out of the negotiation? What do you want in order for this conversation to be successful and for you to be happy when it's over with? And once you can find out what they want, then you can ask for what you want and give them what they want. And of course, now their request may need to be modified a bit. but you know at least where you're starting and what's most important to them.
Yeah. Well, I think the point is that I would make is you need to find out what's important to them. And this is good salespersonship, I guess I should say. But this is good selling if you find these out early, because once you get into the negotiation aspect, we start lying to each other.
I
we start hiding things.
Yeah. Don't negotiate unless somebody's willing to buy from you.
Yeah. All right.
If you're willing to buy from me, then I'll negotiate.
Perfect. Go to getinthedoorpodcast.com, where we'll have all of this information linked in the show notes.
On our next episode, we're going to be covering the topic, who we are and what we do in the Challenger sale afterward, challenging beyond sales.
Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.